How to turn a percentage into a decimal. The story of a broken heart.
When I'm talking about turning a percent into a decimal, I'm going to move it 2 times to the left. Now, I call this my broken heart story because since I'm going to the left, my decimal is leaving my percent and they will no longer be together because I'm going to the left. And you can remember that it left the decimal.
To turn a percentage into a decimal, you are dividing by 100. The easy way is by moving the decimal 2 times to the left. Remember, a decimal is always at the end of any whole number. It's actually invisible. For 5, it's at the end of 5. For 10, it's at the end of 10. And for 628, it's at the end of 628. Let's turn 5% into a decimal.
So where is our invisible decimal? It's going to be right here at the very end of the 5. Now, the reason that I like to call it a love story is because the percent and the decimal are very close together. See how they're together? But the decimal's had it. The decimal wants to break up with the percent. And we're going to move it over 1, 2 times to the left. And now the decimal is all the way over here.
And we got 0 and 5 hundredths. Let's turn 10% into a decimal.
So again, our decimal is right next to the percentage sign, and we're going to move it 1, 2 times to the left, and now our decimal is over here.
We moved it 2 times to the left, and we got 0 and 1/10. We can also say we have 0 and 10 hundredths, because the last 0 does not change the value of the 1 in the decimal spot. Let's change 628% into a decimal. I want you to keep in mind that 628% is larger than 100%, so my decimal should be larger than 0.
So again, our percentage sign and our decimal are next to each other because they're in love, but the decimal doesn't want to be with it anymore. So we're going to move it 2 times. Even though I have 1, 2, 3 numbers, I'm still moving it 2 times. 1, 2, and our decimal is right here.
And my decimal is 6 and 28 hundredths. Let's change 7 and 2/10% into a decimal. You might be thinking that 7 and 2/10 is already a decimal. However, because it is a percentage, it is out of 100, and we need to turn it into a decimal that is not out of 100.
Our decimal and our percent are already having problems because they're not as close as the other ones. But the decimal wants to get really far away, so we're going to move it 2 times to the left. 1, 2, and now the decimal knows for sure that that percent is long gone.
And we get 0 and 72 thousandths. How to turn a decimal into a percentage. A love story. To turn a decimal into a percentage, you are multiplying it by 100 because a percentage is out of 100. The easy way is by moving the decimal 2 times to the right.
When I talk about turning a decimal into a percent, I like to say that it's my love story because my decimal is moving to the right toward my percent sign. I'm going to move it 2 times to the right toward my percent sign, and they will be right together next to each other and in love.
Let's turn 0 and 5 hundredths into a percentage.
So here's our decimal. Our decimal wants to get back together with the percent, but I don't see the percent. You have to think about where the percent would be if it was to appear. The percent would be on this side. So we're going to move our decimal to the right. 1, 2, and now it's right there and our percentage sign appears and they're back together and happy.
It is 5% after we move the decimal 2 times to the right. Let's turn 1/10 into a percentage.
So let's move this one 2 times. 1, 2. Any blank space gets a 0. And there's our percent.
It is 10%. Let's turn 6 28/100 into a percentage.
Now this decimal is larger than 1. So our percent will be larger than 100. We're going to move it over 1, 2 times, and our percent sign is right here.
It is 628%. Let's turn 0 and 123 thousandths into a percent.
This decimal has 3 decimal places. Now that's okay because we're only going to move it 2 times. 1, 2. And our percentage still goes right there.
It is 12.3%.